we look across the Isthmian League and the Southern Central and all the drama that it brings. With the leagues ramping up, recently with the FA Cup coming into play and the FA Trophy just around the corner, we have got a blockbuster episode lined up today. FA Cup upsets, of course, across the country, teams still struggling to get off the foot of the tables, and of course some managers who are maybe running up against the clock. As always, our resident Isthmian fan, Zach, is here. Zach, how have you been, pal?
Yeah, good. Haven't seen Saints lose for a few weeks, so always feeling a bit better after that.
I mean, yeah, it's 4 unbeaten, as you were saying just then before we started recording. So it's a better time, shall we say, to be a St Albans fan from what it was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it's slightly better, but as always, the wheels could fall off at any point. So.
And look, we're happy today as well to be joined by our first guest on the show. Now, he's a young creator following AFC Sudbury in the Southern Premier League, and that's Isaac Mennie. Now, Isaac, thank you for joining us today, mate, and how are you?
No worries. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm all good. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect.
Hopefully it's going to be better than the Sudbury game on Saturday.
I mean, look, Isaac, just quickly then, do you just want to give a little overview on where people can find you across social media and so forth?
So I'm mainly, for the stuff I do at Sudbury, mainly just on X or Twitter. Isaac_Mennie08 is my username, and you'll see on the Sudbury stuff and all the highlights, all the commentary on all the official pages, interviews, and you can use Mixler to find Sudbury and find all the live broadcasts.
Perfect, mate. I mean, let's waste no time and get into it today then, gents, because what we'll do is we'll kick off with the Southern Central first, especially with you being here, Isaac. And in recent weeks, me and Zach on this podcast have spoke about Real Bedford needing a big bounce back, the likes of Harborough and Spalding clicking into gear. You've got the likes of the bottom end of the table, Sudbury, of course, but Royston and so forth, really struggling. But in terms of Real Bedford, I think we'll start there just quickly because we spoke about them in depth recently, haven't we, Zach? But we'll touch on them just briefly because what we said, wasn't it, Zach? They needed a big bounce back in those two games against Redditch and Bury. They didn't get it against Redditch, losing 2-0 in what apparently was their worst performance. And Sinclair finally came out and
finally admitted it was a bad game.
He finally admitted that the performance was bad. But they did get over that and managed to beat Bury in midweek. So what have you made of them over since we last spoke, Zach?
I think it was very interesting to see them bring in Lewis Hilliard, 34 years old, which is something you don't see from Real Bedford. They always go for young, sort of inexperienced players. So they've brought in Lewis Hilliard, who got promoted with Bedford last season, was playing National League North at the start of the season. So he adds experience, adds quality, and I think it's just a smart addition because he can play football, but he can also be a bit of a dirty player in the middle. So I think it's a very smart addition. I think one of those that they just needed. If you actually look at our results, it's very much fine margins, and he could help those fine margins in midfield especially.
No, definitely. And like you say, it's a young squad, isn't it? With, the likes of Setchel out wide and so forth. A number of players that are not used to this level, and we spoke about, haven't we, just not being used to this level, sorry. Isaac, what have you made of Real Bedford so far?
I've been quite shocked, really, when I saw them come up. I was thinking with the money they've got, I was thinking they were going to kick on, set the pace early, along with like Harborough, teams like Harborough, Spalding. So I've been shocked, but I do think from that 2-0 against Bury, 2 quick goals in the first half, they might kick on from there.
No, definitely. I mean, they're looking like that. We said, haven't we, Zach? It's just a matter of time with them when they'll kick on. And it looks like they probably will start to kick on now. A couple of other teams then that we've also spoke about. I mean, I touched on Banbury maybe having a bit of an underrated start last time out. That's been blown way out of the water now because they've gone back-to-back losses. But in terms of the league then, Isaac, what has caught your eyes over the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think obviously with Sudbury, a lot of focus on the bottom of the table. So I've been surprised by Bromsgrove, Stratford, Royston, Stamford even. A lot of poor starts from teams that last season were in mid-table. I didn't expect, when you were thinking maybe you'd see Bury, who are Sudbury's rivals, you'd maybe think they'd be a bit higher up lower down the table than they are. It feels like there's not many teams. The only team really is Barwell that have sort of expectedly been down at the bottom along with Sudbury. But obviously Bishop Stortford were setting the pace early on with 4 wins. But when I was sort of looking, and they beat Sudbury 6-1, which, I mean, on the face of it, it looks like they blew us apart. But we had our striker in goal. when your goalkeeper gets injured in the warm-up. That's not ideal. You don't have a backup one. But then they've played 5 of the current bottom 6 already in their first 5 games, and since they've played Stourbridge and Leyston, I think it is, they've lost both of those. Lost to Hemel Hempstead in the FA Cup, but I'm not sure how actually strong they are, or if they just picked up some points against some teams that you'd be expecting them to do.
No, definitely. I mean, it's interesting you say about Bishop Stortford there, because they've probably just come back down to reality a little bit, because they didn't really pull up any trees last season, did they? And like you say, playing against weaker opposition, they've probably taken full advantage of that, and are now starting to come back down to earth a little bit. I mean, Zach, what have you made of Bishop? Especially, take the Hemel game a little bit lightly, because obviously going up against a Step 2 side and a strong Step 2 side always difficult. But in terms of league, how have you made them over the last couple of
Well,
games?
I think just in general, having 3 losses on the bounce isn't going to help. I think it does give confidence an absolute knock. But I think they still have good quality in the squad, but I don't think it's title contending quality. Like, they have Salima Canby up front, who I think is a fantastic centre forward. But sort of around that as well, they don't have much, and it's not quality in depth. I think they've got a strong starting 11, but players coming off the bench they just don't really have. So I think they will see probably a bit of a drop in form over the next few weeks, but I don't think they'll be overly bothered as well, because I think no one expected them to be up there this season.
No, definitely. And I wanted to touch on something you said there as well, Isaac, about Royston. And I think they've probably been one of the big standouts for me in terms of that bottom end of the table. Now, that I did have them down as like a relegated team and a struggling team. To be honest, I kind of just, I thought maybe one of the mid-table teams will just start to fall into it. And I went with Royston. But even with their attacking quality, they're struggling massively this season. And there's a account on X or Twitter, as whatever people want to call it, BJD Stats. Brilliant insights to so many stats in the Southern Central.
Really
now,
good.
Now Royston have spent 40 days so far, the most out of any team in the relegation zone, which shows how much they are really struggling, isn't it, Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's someone they were quite good at grinding out points. They drew more games than either they won or lost in the previous campaign. So there's a team that, even if they're maybe not at their best, I've known that Sudbury have had some run-ins with them, and we've maybe been the better team, but we've ended up drawing or even losing in sometimes. So I think they've maybe sort of lost that touch of being able to grind out results. But then again, that it's not the greatest of pitches. So when it does get into the winter, you might see them being able to grind out some more results and pick up some more points and get out of the bottom 4, should I say?
No, definitely. I mean, Zach, in terms of Royston, have you seen anything about them that catches the eye or the attention even?
Well, Royston with me actually impressed me with their summer recruitment, but it just hasn't seemed to work out. And I think maybe it's not the right mix of players, but like conceding 15 in 7 games is like horrendous. You need to they need to sort of strengthen the back line majorly. Like, you also look at the squad and it's not a physical squad, which you really need at this level. So I think we need to bring in a couple more sort of just experienced heads if they want to get out of it.
No, definitely. I mean, I look towards the top end of the table as well quickly. I obviously spoke about in the intro there a little bit about Spalding and Harbour clicking into gear. And especially with me, I think Spalding are now really starting to click into gear, because we've spoken about them a couple of times on this show. Maybe iffy moments at the start of the season, losing to Bedford on the Rail Bedford on the first game of the season, and then scraping past the likes of Bromsgrove and Stourbridge, and they drew to Stratford, which on the face of it probably not ideal. But Stratford themselves have been a little bit better in recent weeks. But Spalding have taken, Kettering to the sword in midweek when they were 2-0 down, to then absolutely blow us out the water. They smashed Alfreton in the cup as well, dominated the game at the weekend. And what I saw in particular in that opening day game when I went down to Bedford to watch them was I was really impressed with Jack Roberts, who at only 20 years of age scored 6 goals last season for Spalding after he joined from Bishop Stortford. He got 9 just before that as well. He's already got, I believe it's 4 this season, with a number of assists as well. And what he's doing down that wing, he's just tearing every left back in this division a new one, quite frankly. I mean, Shane Flynn for Kettering got subbed off at half-time because of how badly, how well, Jack Roberts was doing up against him. And you have to talk about Jack Roberts and also talk about the big pole up front, don't you? Bart Sabluski, that is an awful pronunciation, but I mean, he's just one of the best finishers in this league, and I said it to you, Zach. When I watch him run, sometimes it's like he's running in mud sometimes, but his finishing and everything is quality, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And he's one of those, if you give him chances, he will score them. Like, what was it? He scored 3 against you lot.
Yeah, thank you
And
for
it was just,
reminding me.
yeah. But I think, yeah, simply like that sporting team as well is a hard working team. Like, they brought in some really hard working players. Like, for me, like signing Alfie Bendel, who was with St Albans last season, I thought he looked comfortable in the National League South. So having him at step 3 and his son, who will pick up the ball in his own half and just run up players and just drive it through the midfield. So I think, yeah, I think Spalding have got it right this season. I think we'll see them up there.
Yeah, definitely. And Isaac, what's impressed you about Spalding this year?
I think they've sort of, definitely in the recent weeks, they've managed to score the goals where sometimes you might see them lacking, even if you've got a big striker up top that can score. Sometimes you don't get the service right into them, but they seem to be clicking. They're definitely pushing Harbour right now. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep up the form and maybe even make a shot, because I think Harbour, I don't know if they were for you guys, but they were my favourites for the
Yeah,
title.
they were for me, yeah.
So if see if Spalding can cause a shock in the next few months.
No, definitely. Just another one as well from BJD stats as well. It's also they've picked up the third most points in the out of all the Southern Central teams. Sorry, in 2025, because obviously they started really slow under Elliot Sandy last season, and then in 2025 obviously turned it around and pushed for the playoffs late on, just missing out really. But they are a good side, and like Zach said, a hard working side. And I think we do expect them to be up there. I had them to finish in the playoffs this year, but win the playoffs. I had Harbour as my title favourites, and I think they are just far and away at the moment the two best teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, some team that I have been shocked that I thought would be setting the pace early on was Hales Owen. I
Yeah.
thought they're sitting 13th, 14th, sort of lower mid-table. I didn't expect that. I know they lost some players. Connor T went to Real Bedford, but I still thought they'd be a team, at least at this stage, that were setting the pace and maybe fell away and once again got dragged into a playoff battle. But
No, definitely. And then obviously they're one of a number of teams as well who have an FA Cup replay tonight as well. They could be out the cup. Who knows? But Hales Owen is a very interesting one, because I would have probably expected a little bit more from him. Like you say, now I didn't. I think I had them just outside the playoffs in my prediction because of the players they'd lost. But you still expect them up there, wouldn't you?
yeah, no, definitely. Especially, I know it's a cliche, but the 12th man, the Hales Owen fans, they support in their numbers and they really can prove a difference. Especially, we went to their ground last season and I think they were down to 10 and and it was level at the game. And obviously, we were thinking, oh, this could be a great point for us. And then the fans started getting behind them. And suddenly we conceded 2 goals late on and we lost the game. I think it was 3-1 in the end, maybe 4-2. But it's definitely, I think that's a big part. And obviously, when they start kicking on, it could be dangerous for maybe a late playoff charge.
No, definitely. Zach, is there anything at all that you've seen in the Southern Central that's caught your eye before we slowly start to move to Isthmian?
I was looking at actually Needham Market this morning, and it's actually right. Like, you look how fine margins their results are. They've only lost 2 in the league, which is actually very impressive. So it's like they're one of the teams I'm looking at. It's like if you can just fix a couple of little issues, you could be pushing for playoffs. They've got Joe Neal up front, who I've been a massive fan of since he was at St Albans, and I know he was at Sudbury as well for the last couple of seasons. But I think he's someone who works hard. He might not be the greatest finisher, but he will create chances for others and things like that. So Needham, our team, I'm keeping an eye on.
No, definitely. It's interesting to keep your eyes on the likes of Needham Market and Hales Owen over the next couple of weeks. Isaac, is there anything else across the Southern Central that's just caught your eye?
Well, just a bit with Needham actually, because they took, I think, 4 Sudbury players left for Needham in the summer, which obviously that weakened us. They were some of our better players, but I don't know how much of a strengthen they actually made for Needham. Obviously, coming down from the National League North. I mean, I think Sudbury's fans player of the season the last 2 years was Tom Dickens, but he's already moved on to Kings Lynn. So, but I think there's been a couple of injuries to Miles Cowling, and he's definitely a player to look out for. I think he's only 20 years of age, and he was one of, if not the best Sudbury player last season, and was a big part in us staying up after that late charge. towards safety.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, just quickly from me before we move to the Isthmian, obviously me and Zach have spoken in depth really about Harbour and Corn for so many weeks now. I just wanted to touch on them just briefly, but they're continuing, like we said throughout this part so far. Harbour really setting the pace, being one of the strongest teams in the league, and Corn just keep ticking along. That they did lose the other week, but beating Kettering in the FA Cup at the weekend. They've had a difficult week. I think they did really well against Harbour, to be honest, right? To only lose 1-0 after having a red card so early on and to concede so late. I think Corn are really holding their own in this league. I think they're holding their heads up high. And I would not be shocked if they remain in this position for the majority of the season. Let's move on then to the Isthmian League then. And Zach, obviously, I'll let you kick us off, mate. What's been happening across the division?
Well, Folkestone are absolutely flying. 7 wins on the trot, beating Maidstone in the FA Cup, and additionally the signing of Joe Pigott, who was at Wimbledon last season, has hundreds of games in the EFL, and is still very much only 31. I think that's a ridiculous signing, and I think actually now looking at Folkestone, they're very much title contenders.
Yeah.
Billericay as well, new manager. So Danny Scopes, who was at Aveley and very much is an experienced non-league manager, has gone to Wembley with Concord Rangers, took Aveley from step 4 to the playoffs in step 2 in 3 seasons. So, yeah. And also Dartford really, really struggling. And I think a couple more bad results from Dartford, I think we'll see a managerial change there. Because their team should not be down there, and their discipline record is horrendous. 4 or 5 red cards already in the league, which is just awful. I think that's the main things that have happened so far. Dulwich are having had a little bit of a bump. 2 losses, one in the FA Cup, one in the league, but they've come back and beaten Welling, who are also having real struggles down the bottom.
I mean, it's interesting you say about Dartford because we've touched on them in spells, haven't we, over the last couple of weeks, but we haven't really gone in depth on them. But like you say, it's going to be pure panic soon, surely, because they're on just 5 points. You spoke about the discipline record, and it's something we spoke about before as well. I mean, is there anything you can put your finger on to why they're struggling so much away from that discipline record?
Well, I know off the pitch for years, Dartford have had various issues with their owners, and that can always be a contributing factor. But also watching them, like when I saw them against St Albans, tactically, I just think they get it wrong. They're far too direct, and like they've got Ollie Box in attack, who I think, in terms of the players, one of the best players in the league.
Yeah,
but he's 5'3", he's tiny, and they're just pinging long balls up to him. It's like it just leads to nothing. But then again, I watched the highlights against Bracknell. The second half, they were playing it on the floor, playing it quickly, and they tore them apart. So I think it's a mix of just multiple issues there, tactically and maybe behind the scenes.
No, definitely. And that's another thing as well. They're dumped out the FA Cup as well now, aren't they? So it's really, really been a poor start for them. In terms of Folkestone then, because they're one of the teams that have obviously stood out for me as well. Being 6 wins on the bounce in all competitions, the Maidstone win is fantastic, of course. But a fantastic defensive record, a good offensive record as well. What could be the reasoning behind their success, especially in recent weeks, Zach?
For me, simply their manager, Jay Saunders, he should not be a step 3 manager. He was at Tonbridge for years in step 2, with one of the smallest budgets in the league, and just kept them top half competing. So for him to drop down a level to Folkestone, given a proper budget backing, where he's been able to sign some fantastic players, it's no surprise they're flying. And like start of the season, I had them predicted 3rd or 4th, but with the additional signing of Joe Pigott now, I think they'll be very much in the title race.
No, definitely, 100%. They'll be one to watch, especially once, like you say, once Joe Pigott starts to get in the squad, starts to start clicking, and everything goes their way, because I think it is very much going to be up for grabs with, you, like you say, Dulwich maybe in a bit of a spell. Dartford and Billericay still, like Billericay, you expect now to start kicking on.
Yeah, I think Billericay will start flying. I think
still miles away.
Yeah, St Albans still miles away.
St Albans are still miles away as well. Hey, look, Isaac, obviously your expertise do lie in the Southern Central, but is there anything you've seen across the Isthmian that's caught your eye at all?
I mean, I think it's obvious, but Brentwood being top of the table, obviously Sudbury got promoted from the Isthmian North, so it's a league that we always like to check, see how the other Suffolk clubs in there are doing. And they lost in the playoffs the year before last and then won the league last year. But I do think they seem to have a bit of tenacity about them. I was looking, 14 of their goals have all come in the second half and 6 after the 80th minute and quite a few after the 75th. It sort of shows that maybe you don't need to be blowing teams away. They beat Canvey with a 98th minute goal. So I think they're a team that, if as long as things are clicking for them, you don't see how far they can go. There's no boundaries. Could be like an Averley that do back-to-back promotions.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, we were talking about this. It's every league game, they've come from behind and picked up points from behind. And I just think it just sums up the mentality monsters that they are. And I'll keep on saying it. It's like that mentality, you will go far. And I think, yeah, as long as they keep it up. I had a little bit of a shake in the FA Cup this week, first loss. But I think with the mentality they've already shown, I think they'll bounce back from it.
100%. And I think that brings me on quite nicely, because I was going to touch on Brentford being dropped out by Royston, which, to be fair, caught me by surprise a little bit with how much Royston are struggling. But you said there, Zach, that they have you expect them to bounce back in the right way. That bounce back is going to be possibly against Billericay, isn't it? If they are to bounce back under a new manager, a lot of change there. That could be one of the blockbuster clashes this weekend. I mean, do you expect them to bounce back, or do you maybe see a little stumbling block?
I think Brentwood will be happy with a point against Danny Scopes' Billericay side. I also think Billericay will be happy with a point at this early stages under Scopes. So I think it's very much a game to keep an eye on, but I think both teams will be going for a point. But there'll be a lot of quality on display as well in that game. I think both teams have some of the best players in the league. And yeah, it'll be also interesting with Billericay to see if there's any squad changes this week, because I expect Danny Scopes will want to bring in some of his own players.
No, 100%. And they've got the finances to do so, haven't they? So
yeah,
you'd expect them to do something. And with Billericay, obviously, making those changes, making those managerial changes, we touched on it a little bit, but what does the future potentially hold for them? Probably going on and getting themselves up into the title and playoff picture now, don't
they? I think they'll go into the title race, 100%. It's just what Danny Scopes does. But I think most importantly, you'll see a lot of their players develop and go far. It's like, if you look at Danny Scopes' track record, I think so many of his players end up playing in the National League or AFL purely because of his single-handed player development. So I think even with players currently there who might not be performing, they will go to new heights and be pushed really far. And I think that's something very exciting for Billericay fans.
No, definitely. Is there anything else then that you want to touch on in the Isthmian at all, Zach?
Wingate, I think they're really struggling for form a bit at the moment.
Yeah.
Got bumped 7-2 by Dorking.
In the cup, yeah.
But I'm a massive fan of Ahmet Rifat, their manager. And he's got a good squad. I know they're struggling with injuries, but he's, like, if you looked at it last season, the season before, he's very much a form manager. Like, they'll lose 5 on the trot, then they'll go win 10 in a row. So a part of me thinks that's just going to come at some point.
Yeah.
But the issue is, the sooner it doesn't come, like, he's going to start having pressure put on him.
No, definitely. And I'm just looking at it here. It is really tight down there, isn't it? Now, obviously, we, alongside a number of people, have already written off Canvey Island, probably.
Yeah.
But you look at the likes of Welling, Wingate, Potters Bar, Dartford are down there at the moment, Crave Valley, who else could get drawn into that relegation fight with Canvey Island?
I think Welling, I can't believe I'm saying this, they were in the National League for, what feels like 15 years, feels like forever. And now they're fighting relegation in the Isthmian, and it's just I watched a few of their highlights, they just look absolutely dreadful. There's nothing inspiring about them. Potters Bar, when St Albans played them, I think they're one of the worst teams we've played so far. They just lack physicality. It's we're one of the least physical sides in the league, but even we outmuscled them.
Yeah.
And caused some issues. I think Dartford will turn it around, whether that's with their current manager or not. They've got the budget. So I think Cray Valley, Carshalton will be pulled in. Hashtag, maybe. It's hard to say with hashtag. Because they always seem to turn it around whenever they're on a bad run. So.
Yeah, definitely. And they've had a couple of players leave over the last couple of days, haven't they?
Yeah.
As well. It looks like there is possibly a squad overhaul about to come in.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything else to add at all about the Isthmian before we move on to some FA Cup talk?
One last thing is Welling versus Canby is coming up, and I feel like whoever loses that, their manager's getting the chop. Classic sack off between the two
It's
teams.
an early 6-pointer in, what are we? It's the 16th of September today.
Yeah.
Coming to the end of September, and it's already, an early 6-pointer in the relegation scrap.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, look, that's perfect then. Let's talk about some FA Cup action, and I'll let you run us off first, Isaac. What caught your eye in terms of the FA Cup weekend just gone? Obviously, in terms of Sudbury, it was gutting to lose out late to Averley, but away from that and including that, what else happened?
I mean, unsurprisingly, I looked at a lot of the Southern League teams, the Southern League Centre, and how they got on, and it was quite successful, really. But I think the teams, there were a lot of replays.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not a lot, but Bury, Banbury, and Halesowen are all going to replays, and they're all teams in lower divisions.
Yeah.
And I think Bury, obviously, Woodford Town, which aren't particularly, I think Step 5, they're not particularly a team that is well known to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at home to draw 1-1. It could be tough for them tonight. You never know. Step 5 pitches aren't the greatest, so it'll be interesting to see. And obviously for the league, it could be good to see another 3 sides do go through. But
Yeah.
Banbury, we touched on them earlier, back-to-back losses, and then you don't want to have to draw with a team below in the FA Cup, especially when the games are going thick and fast as well.
No, exactly.
It can really tire the legs out. But I think it was a couple of cup upsets. I mean, Alvechurch beating Leamington 3-0,
Mm-hmm.
which, I mean, Sudbury and Leamington have quite a good friendship relationship after a successful final day a couple of years back. And I think the stat was they haven't won more than one game in the FA Cup since 2005. So I wasn't even born when the last time they got through to the fourth qualifying round. So, but still, and then obviously we touched on Spalding earlier and their fantastic win. So successful, I would say, for the Southern League in the FA Cup.
No, it definitely was. I mean, like you said, you saw our church dump out Leamington Spa then. You also had Harborough coming back from 2-0 down to beat Workshop, and who are obviously doing relatively well in the National League North in their first year up there. St Albans, of course, Lax surviving a late scare against Hitchin.
Yeah.
There was many good games across the FA Cup, wasn't there?
Yeah, 100%. St. Albans game 1-0 up, concede in the 92nd minute a penalty, then win it in the 94th. Doesn't get better than that. Actually, Bedford versus Dagenham, I think
Yeah.
Andy Carroll, first competitive start, sent off before half time. I think it was an elbow. But I think that's going to be the story of Andy Carroll's season. Westbury beating Oxford City 3-2. I think Westbury are step 5,
Mm-hmm.
I want to say. And beating step 2 Oxford City, I think that's an absolute mare for Oxford City as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And Billericay beating fellow step 3 side Berkhamsted 3-0. I think that's a sign of things to come with Danny Scopes, as mentioned previously. Then also Peterborough Sports, who have just brought in Phil Brown as manager. Is that his name? I think, yeah. Beating Hornchurch, who are unbeaten so far in all competitions. So, I think that's a big win and also a sign of things to come for them.
No, definitely. And in terms of that Bedford versus Dagenham game, obviously that replay, one of many on tonight. The winner of that obviously goes on to play Spalding, don't they? Now, that would be a really good opportunity possibly for Spalding, because I think Bedford and Dagenham both, with the greatest respect, are both struggling a little bit in their leagues and in step 2 a little bit. So it could be an opportunity for Spalding there if they were to go on and face one of those two, obviously. The Peterborough Sports one, now they'll obviously face Harborough in the next round, which I think could be a real chance again for one of our for Harborough to go through, because Peterborough Sports, I was quite shocked they beat Hornchurch, to be honest. But it's what Phil Brown does, really, isn't it? In non-league, he just gets a tune relatively quickly, and Peterborough Sports may seem a little turnaround now, but I still think they'll be one of the teams that go down from step 2. But Harborough, I think they'll be licking their lips at that tie, because they played each other a couple of times in the lower divisions. I think Mitch Austin will be well up for that one, especially being at home as well. It's a real chance for Harbour to have another good cup run this season. Like I said there, I think in terms of looking at that next round then, in terms of the draws and so forth, I think Spalding versus either Bedford or Dagenham could be a potential blockbuster. And I'm looking at Overchurch versus Chelmsford as well, because Chelmsford have had a bit of a hit and miss start, haven't they, Zach, at the start of the season, having been heavily backed. And Overchurch obviously pulled up one cup upset. They could do it again. But what stands out for you then, Zach, in terms of the next round draw?
I think for me, Enfield Town versus Corn. I think
Yeah,
that's a very exciting draw. I hope it goes to a replay so I can go to that. But Enfield are one of the, probably in step two, probably one of the lowest budget sides and have had a bit of a poor start. But they also had a poor start last season and had one of the best finishes to the season. I think Corn have been flying for the last 18 months. It feels
yeah,
like, and a team very much on the up. So I feel like that's just going to be a really exciting game. I think Enfield have a fantastic supporter base and will show up through the FA Cup. And as we've said many times, Corn are very much on the up, very much an exciting club to follow.
no,
So
exactly.
yeah, I think that's a game. Merthyr versus Hampton, National League versus National League South is a game I'm
Yeah.
also very excited for. Like both very well coached sides, very organised, both have some fantastic players. And I think that's going to be a very tight game.
No, definitely. And obviously, I'm just trying to look at the draw here. Now, Folkestone will play the winner of Westfield versus Horsham, won't they? So would you expect them to continue their, top run in the next round?
I think Horsham should beat Westfield. It's an absolute shock it's gone to a replay. But Horsham should beat Westfield. I think Folkestone will struggle against the Horsham side. Dom De Paula, the Horsham manager,
Yeah.
is very, makes the sides very good, very tough to beat. Done many cup sets against Dorking before, especially. But yeah,
No, definitely. I mean, Isaac, is there any that stand out to you in terms of FA Cup draw at all?
I mean, I definitely, it's no surprise looking at the Southern Central, but also the Suffolk clubs and Needham have once again got a favourable home draw.
Yeah, they have.
They've
Yeah.
either got more Barton or Whittam, so there's two teams you should see them in the next qualifying round. Then a game away from the first round proper. Leiston might have Chasetown or Banbury, most likely Banbury, but you never know. And then Bury, if they can get through, they've got St Albans. So that's the only really tough draw for the Suffolk clubs potentially, because I think Leiston they've been getting some good results, so you might see them beat Banbury. But it'll hurt from a Sudbury perspective to see some Suffolk clubs progressing to the next round of the FA Cup. But then there's also quite a lot of potential cup upsets. I think it's 5 of the Southern League clubs have National League North or National League
Hmm.
South opponents. So it could be either a complete whitewash or it could be some good cup upsets to have a look at in a couple of weeks' time.
No, definitely. And I would be a lot more inclined to be more excited of the FA Cup if Kettering didn't get dumped out at the weekend. Which I'll obviously talk about when we get onto the Kettering talk.
I can
a little
agree
bit
with
later.
that.
I mean, it just puts a little bit of a damper on it. But like you said, yeah, it has an opportunity, especially for the Southern Central clubs, to do that cup upset, because we saw it last season, didn't we, with the likes of Kettering and Harbour going on to do very good things in the FA Cup, and it's obviously just a fantastic thing for the league, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's great, especially as more and more non-league exposure happens. Even if they're the clubs that you wish it was you in that league that was making the FA Cup run, but it's still good to see. Obviously, Doncaster and Northampton were both televised games for Kettering, Reading. I'm not sure if it was. I think it was Harbour Reading was televised, so it's really good for the exposure of non-league, and also obviously along with this podcast, just a couple more eyes on the Southern League Central is nice to see, rather than having to answer and explain where we are at the football pyramid.
I mean, moving on from then that, lads, let's, talk about some of these upcoming matches in terms of league positions and league phases and so forth. I mean, Isaac, I'll let you kick us off, mate. What games tickle your fancy over the next, week or two?
Well, looking at Saturday, I think the focus has to be on the bottom. I was looking
Yeah.
8 of the bottom 9 all play each other. So 4 games involving those teams at the bottom. So it could be all change. You can see teams that, like Sudbury, we have Stratford, so that we could leapfrog them. And then on the Tuesday, we also have Royston. So that's a huge game at home. But so there's a lot of the lower down teams. But I also think Bishop Stortford have a lot to prove this week and really just show the league where they are, because Needham and Kettering back to back, obviously Kettering on Saturday. If they can get 2 points, maybe if they were to get draws, both tough teams to go to. Especially interested to see if Needham do actually kick on, and Kettering obviously have started really well, even if they lost to Spalding and in the FA Cup.
No, definitely. I mean, it is. I'm looking at it now as well. It is very much going to be a tale of the bottom end clubs, isn't it? Really. You look at Stratford versus Hales Owen on the Tuesday night as another one potentially for Stratford now. They obviously went out the cup to Hales Owen a couple of weeks ago, but they managed to turn their form around a little bit. Sorry, they thumped Barwell over the week recently as well. Sorry, got a draw over Spalding. Got a draw in that first time game against Hales Owen, of course, in the FA Cup before going to replay. So they're starting to turn it around a bit. You could maybe see them get something with Hales Owen still not really kicking on yet. And I do like the look of that Royston versus Sudbury game as well, to be honest, because it is a massive game at the bottom end, isn't it, really, Isaac?
Yeah, and obviously, definitely home advantage for Sudbury could prove crucial. It's definitely not a lot of teams enjoy playing on the 3G. It's obviously a talking point in non-league, the amount of 3G pitches. I know some fans really dislike them, and obviously Sudbury's is an old 3G. Definitely looking in the next few years, it's going to be renewed. So I think it also is going to sort of show where Royston actually are in terms of the Southern League, because if they do beat Sudbury, which would be unfortunate for us, maybe that's the result they need to kick on, especially if they can't remember who they have exactly on Saturday, but one of the bottom clubs, I imagine. I think it's Barwell are the only one that don't have one of the bottom 9 clubs. But it's definitely a big game. So looking forward to that if Sudbury can get a good point against Stratford, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a bit.
No, definitely. I mean, just quickly before I touch on the Isthmian then, Zach, I think the Kettering games in particular, not just from a personal point, but they are huge for the league.
Yeah.
Like you said there, obviously Kettering versus Bishop Stortford, two teams really looking to bounce back after a couple of unfortunate results or poor performances in some cases. And then obviously they follow that up with Stamford, where really I think Kettering will need to be looking for at least 4 points out of those games to get back on track. Because obviously they've had difficult games against Harborough, Spalding and Corn, but it is now trying to get back on track, and that Bishop Stortford game could pose a good opportunity to do so, but who knows?
I think
Because
in terms of
everyone
quality,
has it.
yeah, that's what I was about to say. If everyone was available for you lot, I think you beat Stortford just due to the quality around your whole squad. But yeah, the other game I've got my eye on is Worcester versus Real Bedford, because it'll be interesting to see if Real Bedford can follow up their game against Bury with another win. I think if they fail to win, I think that's when it's like they don't have the squad to go get playoffs / be in the title race. So yeah, will be interesting.
No, definitely. In terms of the Isthmian then, Zach, what fixtures are really standing out? Obviously, we spoke about Brentwood versus Billericay being probably one of the biggest games of the weekend. But away from that, where else should people be looking?
I think Aveley at home versus Dartford. I think that's going to be a very interesting one, because Aveley have had a all right start to the season, mid-table, sort of where I expected them to be. Dartford have been underperforming. I think very much Dartford have to go there and win. I think if they fail to win, I think time could be up for Pennock as well. Got Wingate versus Chichester. Chichester have been a weird side. They've lost to like everyone towards the bottom of the league and beaten everyone towards the top. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Wingate at home can get a result. Also, as mentioned previously, Welling versus Canby as sort of whoever will get sacked. Then Potters Bar versus Cray Valley very much could dictate how the bottom of the league's going to start to shape up. Then also, obviously, St Albans away to Whitehawk. Just looking forward to the day out in Brighton on Saturday. So.
Well, at least there's that. At least you can have the day out if the result's not ideal. I mean, Isaac, I really wanted to get your take on Sudbury this season because it's been difficult in spells, of course, for sure. But, what have been your takeaways so
I
far?
think obviously I saw a lot of predictions. You see it, and Sudbury predicted to go down. It's probably justified to see. I mean, obviously, not many teams are in relegation scraps back to back, and then stay up twice, and then are suddenly miraculously going to be pushing for the playoffs or mid-table. But I think it is a new team. A lot of the players left. I think we kept maybe three of the first team players that are still starting almost week in, week out, which so obviously that's difficult. But Danny Laws is a really good manager. He knows a lot of players, so we've seen a couple of returning academy graduates, and we've messed around with, not messed around, but we tried different formations. We had Karen Clements, he was at Braintree a few years ago, Berry, Leyston, send him, he scores a lot of goals for a defender, so he was in attack for the start of the year. Then after the games that I missed the start of the season, but Bishop Stortford, Alvechurch, and then Corn conceding 12 goals in 3 games. You've got to change it around. So we've seen Karen Clements drop back into the back, and he's been solid. He scored against Averley. I think the glaringly obvious issue for Sudbury is the lack of a striker, and I think Danny would tell you that. I think every fan would tell you that. If you were to look at the games I've seen from Bury Town away up until now. I've seen all of those games, and we didn't take our chance against Bury. We took our chance against 10-man Mildenhall and Banbury, although we had to leave it late against Banbury. Then St Ives, they could have scored in the first half, but we could have had 2 or 3. And if you score 2 or 3, you might, the confidence on that, you might go and get more. And then against Averley, we should have been 3-0 up at half time, 1-0, and then 2 goals in the second half, especially that penalty. But I think there are positives to take. I don't think it's a case of we're in the relegation zone now, we're not going to climb out of it. I think the next 2 games are huge. I think 2 teams, Stratford, obviously, it was a shock they're in and amongst it, but they are. And they're a team that when they came to us last season, we beat them pretty comprehensively. And I know it's a different team, but it's, as I said earlier, we're not a ground that clubs that like to go to. Teams don't like the 3G, so it does make it difficult. And I think Royston, obviously, I think that is probably the biggest game of the Tuesday. And so I think it is exciting, but it's also, if we come out with, I think the 4 points is what the ambition is. And I think anything less than that could be warning signs. But who knows what's to come? You never know who's going to sign, who's going to hit a bit of form. We've got Callum Page has been this close. He's been just inches wide maybe a couple of times to opening his account for the season. And then he gets one when it rains, it pours for Callum Page. So hopefully we're going to see some improvements on the goal-scoring fronts. But then again, we put 4 past Mildenhall. So I think that's where I am for Sudbury. I think there's positives to take. And I don't think you can write off any team, actually, which hasn't been done for a long time. The last few seasons, Long Eaton, you could write off basically day one.
True.
Hitchin last season were almost written off after 4 or 5 games. Even though they made a bit of a recovery, they were never going to make it. Same as Biggleswade. But this year, this seems to be quite equal. I think it helps the promoted teams have all kicked on. So there's even 100%. If Bedford and Worcester haven't, but it's good. I'm enjoying this relegation battle, unfortunately, but it's an exciting one, definitely.
No, definitely, 100% is. I mean, like you say there, the lack of the striker is definitely going to be an issue, or is an issue at the moment. But you never know what could happen over the next couple of weeks. In fact, if you pick up the win over Royston, like you say, it will just massive confidence boost for yourselves. And even if Royston go, whatever team wins that game, if a team is to win it, they'll just get a massive confident boost from that, won't they?
I think it is a pivotal point in the season, which seems crazy to be saying, as you said earlier, on the 16th of September. But I think non-league
Yeah.
is the barest of margins change a season. And when you're looking come April, why teams have maybe either gone down or why they've stayed up, you're thinking it was these games in September, October that maybe you thought, oh, good win for them. But I think the Banbury game is going to be huge come the end because they're a team that were flying, and even though they had 10 players, they're a good team and they were very organised, and we managed to break through. And I think if we can do that a couple more times, just get that breakthrough, suddenly two wins from 7 games is not actually bad for a team in the relegation zone, and I think everyone's pushing forwards. So I think we need to get a bit better at getting draws, which sounds anti-football and really negative. But we've either we've won or lost, and you can't really afford to do that in a relegation zone. If you get a draw against St. Ives, who are flying right now, they've picked up some back-to-back wins, so they're picking some form. I thought they'd be down with us. If you get a draw at that game, you're thinking that's a good point away from home. But obviously, I'm sure all the players and the staff all know this, and hopefully we will be kicking on soon, and hopefully we'll be able to put the ball in the back of the net a couple more times.
Hopefully, mate. I mean, look, I guess I'll round us off then with what has been a brilliant couple of weeks to be a Kettering fan. So away from results, which have, on the face of it, not ideal, of course, because it's a fair few losses, but you have to take into consideration the likes of Harborough, Spalding, and maybe the Corn situation where we had only 3 players on the bench on Saturday because apparently everyone's ill. Which I don't want. I'm going to lean on the side of caution in terms of getting onto that because there's a lot of rumours about player unrest and so forth. But I'll purely speak on the results. Now, obviously, I can say that losing to Spalding and Harbour isn't, it's not the be all and end all. But when you're a team going for the promotion, you kind of want to give a bit more against those teams that are expected to be in and around you, don't you? And especially in the Spalding game, after we went 2-0 up, it just went downhill so quickly, and the capitulation, 8 minutes it took for Bart to score a hat-trick or something like that. So defensively, it's not been ideal for Kettering. Obviously, had that to being dumped out the FA Cup at the weekend where we went 2-0 down, but Eddie Oppang, who's been pretty decent, to be fair, at the start of his Kettering career, scored a very nice goal by the sounds of it, but it was too little too late. And we've got a little bit of a divided fan base at the moment because a fair few people were deciding whether or not Simon Holyhead is the right man to take us forward. I've had a couple of people tell me that they want him gone and they want someone else in. I've had a number of people saying, to just give him some time. And I think I'm going to lean on the side of giving him time because now I think he was hired relatively late in terms of being, I think it was like June or July sort of time, maybe July, right before the start of pre-season, when you consider that Lavs left not long after the playoff final, and he had a huge squad overhaul to deal with. He was signing players right up until the day before the season kicked off to go right into a starting 11 with no time really to adapt. I think just give Simon a couple more weeks, and these 2 games potentially against Bishop Stortford and Stamford as well could be huge for him. But it's been an interesting time to be a Kettering fan. I think some of the fan base maybe just need to calm down a little bit because it's not the be all of end all. We're still in and around those playoff positions at the moment. Like you said, we've only really lost to top teams so far. But it is really, really tight in those playoff spots already early doors. You even see the likes of Alvechurch in there at the moment on 13 points, having a good season so far. So things do need to change for us to turn it around, especially defensively. We have the worst record, I believe, in the top 10 with Leiston, conceded 10 goals so far, which for a Simon Holyhead team who had the best defensive record in the league last year at Banbury, bit of a shock maybe, and some good defensive signings as well. Offensively, look, there's no 2 ways about it. We don't struggle to score goals. it's about shutting them out at the other end of the pitch. So that's pretty much where it is with Kettering. There is a Q&A at tonight at the club, which I'll be keeping my eye on because I want to know if players do actually have the flu or not. But other than that, if anything
to talk about non-league and the Isthmian and the Southern Central. Again, just on Twitter, on X, Isaac_Mennie08, and you'll be able to see all my stuff really on AFC Sudbury social medias, so on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and on if you want to follow some of the Sudbury live broadcasts, always looking for people that might want to listen, especially if when Kettering have an away game, if Kettering are away at Sudbury, if you want to listen in, if you're a Kettering fan or whatever, or any fan, on Mixler, AFC Sudbury. So thank you again for inviting me on.
Perfect, mate. And Zach, as always, mate, a pleasure. Just give any new viewers that have maybe tuned in for the first time today a little reminder of where they can find you.
Yeah, so at Non-League's chat, should be called the Non-League Expert, the main handle. On Twitter, yeah, just post about National League South, Isthmian League, football, mainly non-league, and yeah.
Perfect, mate. And of course, thank you to everyone who has tuned in. Now, Below the Pyramid has been a project we've really enjoyed doing so far, and we're excited to keep bringing it to you. Any feedback is much appreciated. Now, if you missed anything about our announcements over the last couple of days, now we are set to have a blockbuster podcast lined up with Hale's Owen boss, Russell Penn, which will follow this episode in a couple of days. So once that drops, be sure to check that one out. But until next time, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you later.